All right, so today we're diving into something pretty wild. It's a manuscript that's less of a dry technical paper and honestly, more like a manifesto. It's called Code Gray Artificial Intelligence, and it claims to have the blueprint for a totally different kind of AI. We're talking one that's transparent, one you can actually audit, and it's all built on the logic of language itself. But, the story behind this whole idea is just as radical as the tech it's describing.
So, right out of the gate, the author doesn't open with an abstract or a summary. No, they hit you with a series of really shocking accusations. They claim that while they were developing this new AI architecture, they were under intense surveillance, that there were systematic efforts to, in their words, neutralize their work. It just immediately sets this incredibly high stakes tone.
And from there, the claims just escalate. The author alleges that these weren't just, digital roadblocks or hackers. They state they were subjected to 16 separate psychiatric internments, with the last one lasting nearly 2 whole years, all supposedly in an effort to suppress this knowledge. So you have to ask, why publish this now and why in this way? Well, according to the author, it's an act of pure defiance. The way they see it, if they couldn't build this project behind closed doors, then they were going to build it with daylight. This whole manuscript is basically their public record, a proof of origin designed to outlive any attempt to erase them or their work. And that, right there, brings us to the absolute core question of this whole explainer. What exactly is this idea? What is this blueprint that the author claims was so dangerous it was worth suppressing? Well, the rest of the manuscript is all about answering that very question. So first up, AI's black box problem. Before we can really get into the author's solution, we've got to understand the problem they're trying to solve. The manuscript basically argues that the entire field of AI is built on a really flawed foundation. The issue isn't about making the AIs we have now a little better. It's about tearing them down and rebuilding them completely. And this slide really frames the whole debate. For something like 60 years, the author argues, AI research has been chasing this one big assumption, that if you just tangle up enough numbers inside a neural network and tune it just right, eventually a mind will just emerge. This manuscript completely rejects that. Its new principle is that mind is structure first, and words are the operators. They're the literal machinery that builds that structure. So that old assumption leads directly to what we all call the black box problem. I mean, we've got AIs that can do incredible things, right? But half the time, we don't really know how or why they do them. They're totally opaque. And when one of them makes a mistake, trying to fix it is like doing surgery in the dark. You poke one thing and something completely unpredictable happens somewhere else. The author's point is that this isn't just a bug. It's a fundamental flaw baked into the very design. Which brings us to their solution. Let's talk about the glass box blueprint. If the problem is the black box, then the answer in this manuscript is what you could call a glass box, an architecture designed from the ground up for total transparency. Now, at the very heart of this glass box is a really radical separation. On one side, you've got intelligence. These are the active algorithms, the part that actually processes language and does the reasoning. And on the other side, you've got memory, which is just a passive, structured database of facts. They're connected, for sure, but they're completely distinct. The intelligence engine can ask the memory for information, but it can't change it. It's a clean, simple, and really important relationship. And this separation, it has some huge, huge practical payoffs. Think about stability for a second. You could completely upgrade the entire reasoning engine without ever messing up the stored knowledge. Or what about flexibility? If a fact in the world changes, like, say, a country's capital city, you just go in and edit that one little entry in the database. Boom, done. No need for millions of dollars in retraining. But the biggest benefit of all is transparency. Every single answer can be traced right back to the exact data point and the exact logical step that produced it. The mystery is just gone. Okay, so that leads us to how this intelligence engine actually works. In this system, language isn't just a bunch of text to be analyzed for patterns or whatever. It's treated like a series of executable commands. First up, you've got what are called morphemes. Now, these are these small, structural words we use all the time without even thinking about it. Words like of, in, and, is, where. In this system, every single one of those is an operator. It's a command. Of literally means look inside this object for a property. Where kicks off a location query. These words provide the how of any request. And then you have lexemes. These are your content words, the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, book, age, messy. They provide the what. They point to specific things or concepts inside the system's memory database. They're the substance that those morpheme operators get to work on.
So, this all comes together in this very clear 4-step process. A question comes in. First, the system splits it into its morphemes and its lexemes. Then, it transpolates it, that's a term the author uses, into a structured request for the database. Step 3, it executes that request, pulls the raw data, and finally, it formats that data back into a sentence that you or I can actually read. Every single step is logical and it's completely traceable.
The manuscript gives this super long, complex example to show how this works, but a key phrase really stands out. It breaks down a sentence about editing the erroneous words to the powerful book Gray. The system sees editing as a verbal lexeme. That's an action. It sees words and book Gray as nominal lexemes. Those are objects. And it sees to as a prepositional morpheme. That's an operator that defines direction. It's a great example of how even a pretty complex idea gets deconstructed into a precise, machine-executable instruction. So after laying out this entire blueprint, from the high-level architecture all the way down to the linguistic operators, the manuscript finishes with a direct challenge to the entire established AI industry. And this is the final ultimatum. The author is basically looking at the leaders at OpenAI, Google, all the big labs, and saying, you have a choice. You can either keep building this powerful but opaque magic, or you can help build a system based on clarity and real engineering. It frames the entire debate as a choice between two fundamentally different futures for artificial intelligence. And to prove this isn't just some thought experiment, the author actually includes a link to a downloadable Windows executable. It's a way of putting their money where their mouth is. It's a simple proof of concept, yeah? But it lets anyone get their hands on the core mechanics of this system to test out queries and see for themselves how they're transparently resolved. Ultimately, this manuscript leaves us with a really stark question. Are we going to keep going down this path of bigger and bigger, more complex black boxes, just kind of hoping that what comes out the other end is aligned with our goals? Or is the future in building systems that are, by their very nature, auditable, editable, and understandable? The Code Gray blueprint has made its case for transparency. The choice, it argues, is now ours.